Do you remember back in March when I asked Governor J.B. Pritzker to, I guess, explain the $1 million he gave to each of two Supreme Court justice candidates that ultimately won and are on the bench ruling on laws that Governor J.B. Pritzker put into effect with his signature? Here's the governor back then talking about, the criticism people have of perceived conflicts of interest.
I am sure this is something that the right wing is trying to stir up. I know you've written about it. The fact of the matter is I supported candidates who are running all across the board. If you're suggesting that the fact that I gave money to, let's say, the Democratic Party or to the committees that supported candidates means that everybody who received any money has to recuse themselves from anything to do with the state of Illinois, that's ridiculous. And I've certainly never asked anybody to vote a certain way or decide on a case a certain way. I would never do that. I never have. I never will. And these are independent judges, and they didn't go around and campaign on things, that they thought would win my support for them. I believe in them. I supported them like lots of other people did.
Well, Kenneth Mayle, who is a electrical engineer from Chicago, he had some reaction to this, and in particular saying it's just not a realistic idea that the governor's proposing there.
Yeah, if you were given $1 million by somebody and there's an expectation maybe in the future you might, receive it again, like when you donate to a 501c3 or something like that, they come back later and, hey, can you give me some more? It's almost like, who's controlling who? If you don't essentially act the governor, if they didn't rule in his favor, do you think that they're going to keep supporting them as justices in their campaigns and things like that? I mean, that's pretty obvious, or in future endeavors, depending on where they go in the future and things like that. It's just, I think there's an expectation that if you get money from somebody that either you're a supporter or you're going to essentially promote their agenda,
All right. So, again, that's Kenneth Mayle, an electrical engineer out of Chicago that ultimately sat down with me for about 10 minutes yesterday when I called him to discuss a letter he received back from the Judicial Inquiry Board where he filed a complaint alleging conflicts of interest with two Supreme Court justices that were on the bench doing official business after getting that $1 million from Governor J.B. Pritzker last year. So we talked further just really about why he decided to file this challenge to the Judicial Inquiry Board. More from Kenneth Mayle.
And I mean, it just didn't sound right what's going on, and I found, there's a process to file the complaints to the Judicial Inquiry Board. So I did so, feeling like, you can't have, the governor essentially giving justices money for their campaigns or whatnot, and being essentially the defendant on something for their ruling. So I'm like, the JIB exists for that reason, to kind of keep, judiciary branch in check. That thinking that, hey, this, you can't, there's conflict of interest there.
And Mayle said that he filed the complaint at the Judicial Inquiry Board, which is a board constituted by people appointed by the Illinois Supreme Court and people appointed by the governor. And I looked at the list, and most of the governor appointees are from Pritzker. I think there's a holdover from the Rauner administration, but that's apparently going to be opening up later on this year, so the governor will be able to appoint somebody else to the Judicial Inquiry Board. But you also have members that are part of the board that are appointed by the Illinois Supreme Court. But Mayle talks about he found this. He saw some of the reporting that I had done, and that seemed to have been the impetus of him wanting to file this challenge to the Illinois Judicial Inquiry Board.
Was put in on March 22nd, it looks like, from my documents. What they received it, I believe, or at least when I got the document from the JIB saying they received it.
Now, had he had any conversation with them between then, when he filed it and when he got the letter just a handful of weeks after he filed it in mid-May? Was there any communication from the JIB with Mayle?
There was really none. I just submitted information, and they sent me like the reception. There was no attempt to contact me by phone or follow up or anything like that. They just they took my intake and then dismissed it. Not too long thereafter.
Now, what's his reaction to the challenge being dismissed? And listen, he's not the only one getting a letter saying that his complaint has been closed. I've confirmed at least one other, and if you've got some that you filed and you've gotten rejection letters essentially saying that the complaint has been closed, you can email those to me. And if you want to stay anonymous, you can. Just email me, bishoponair@gmail.com. Again, bishoponair@gmail.com, and we can communicate that way. I promise complete anonymity unless you're willing to go on record after I say, with your permission, tape is recording. And that's something that Kenneth Mayle agreed to. He was fine talking about this, but he reacted to the letter he got saying that his complaint's being closed.
I mean, I wasn't really surprised, but I was pretty let down, simply because, the way they just dismissed it without like any real detail. It just says, the Judicial Inquiry Board has concluded its review of the allegations detailed in your complaint against Illinois State Court justices and determined to close this matter. The board's determination to close this complaint is in no way an opinion as to the merits of your court case. So, I mean, that's pretty, tight-lipped that, there was really no explanation, and it was disheartening, but if you can't complain to the regulatory body, like where else do you really go?
So again, Kenneth Mayle really laying out there some of his reaction to getting a letter saying that his complaint has been closed from the Judicial Inquiry Board. Stay tuned. He'll talk a little bit about the future, his concerns, especially with this issue seeming to not be a concern of the Judicial Inquiry Board of apparent conflicts of interest. So we'll talk about the consequences he sees, but also, again, hear what the governor had to say about concerns on this and more from Kenneth Mayle. So stay tuned. It's coming up here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on WMAY. Been sharing some of the conversation I had with Kenneth Mayle. He is an electrical engineer out of Chicago. Just one of several that I'm aware of, individuals getting letters from the Illinois Judicial Inquiry Board closing their complaints against two Illinois Supreme Court justices that took $1 million from each to their campaign contributions from Governor J.B. Pritzker before they got elected. And now they're on the bench deciding issues pertaining to laws Governor J.B. Pritzker signed. These two justices, Elizabeth Rochford and Mary O'Brien, they've already been on the majority side of upholding the Pretrial Fairness Act that ends cash bail in the state of Illinois. So they already are on record with that, but they were also on the bench and refused to recuse themselves in the case challenging Illinois' gun and magazine ban. So the fact that they got back a letter essentially saying, the Judicial Inquiry Board's closing this investigation, Kenneth Mayle reacts to that. We'll get to it coming up here, but I want to get some of your phone calls as they're coming in. So we'll go ahead and get those queued up here at 217-629-7970. That's the phone number, and let's go ahead and get to it. Good morning. You are on WMAY. That would be you. Good morning.
Let me get this straight. We're surprised that some Chicago gangster bought up a couple of judges. Is that like supposed to be something new?
Listen, I appreciate the cynicism. As a journalist, it's kind of ingrained in me. But I mean, it's important that it's at least out there in the open that we know where we're at, right?
Well, the thing about it is they're like. Chicago politics is like dandelions. You cut them, but for every crooked one you cut down, you get like 10 more that crop up, come back, start all over again. They're crooks. They're always going to be crooks. They ain't never going to change.
All right, got you down. 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Morning, Bishop.
Hey.
When did Pete Rose become our governor?
For those who don't follow sports, elaborate on that analogy.
Well, Pete Rose was the coach of a team, and he supposedly, I don't even actually think they ever found the evidence. I may be wrong on that. Supposedly bet on his own team to win or lose. which in turn the governor gave money to a lawyer, a judge who is going to be on the panel of the bills that he's trying to pass. It just kind of, where's the irony at in this? Does not every single person see a problem with this?
It's an interesting question, not sure, but Kenneth Mayle, again, he lays out his reaction to getting that letter closing his request for an investigation from the Judicial Inquiry Board, and he has concerns with the future of all of this moving forward.
Threat to democracy, that if you have this relationship between the branches and all like that, where there's money involved and you're getting... the governor appoints it sounds like from my research that the government appoints the board on the JIBs, and the JIBs supposed to keep the court in check. It's like, that's in my opinion, a threat to democracy. You look at like what's going on with like Senator Durbin, and he's going after ethics complaints with Clarence Thomas and all like that. But like, look what's going on in his home state. That's it's disturbing that, like, things like that. And like, look what's going on over in Israel right now, like with their Supreme Court getting weakened, and like they're protesting on the streets and all like that. And like, what's going on? Like, what's going on in the U.S. when this type of stuff is being allowed to let go? It's kind of disheartening to see, like, this stuff is happening in our home state. There's a double standard, it seems like, that, with Durbin and everybody else. So like, where's the checks and balances,
So where do we go from here? It's a question that I don't know we have an answer to. I've seen some speculate that, for instance, if the Supreme Court rules against plaintiffs in the gun and magazine ban in the Illinois Supreme Court, since they already laid the groundwork of requesting that these two justices recuse themselves, and they refused to recuse themselves in that challenge, that could lay the groundwork for the plaintiffs to possibly take it to the U.S. Supreme Court based off of other precedent concerning justices getting campaign contributions and then taking part in litigation that might have either a plaintiff or a defendant as the person who donated to their campaign. So this is not the last we've heard of it, but obviously a lot of people, the cynicism's out there that this is just going to go by the way of, status quo. All right, so interesting to hear all of that.